At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
So that is where when Sarma sir is saying that why should I need to prove my patriotism, he's very correct in the fact.
Look at the Russia and Ukraine conflict. At that time, we congratulated our foreign affairs minister for taking the right stance, as well as the prime minister, because we were neither supporting Russia nor Ukraine. But maybe that detachment led to our some sort of isolation during Operation Sindoor.
So when you look at only the trade angle, the policies that Mr. Trump is proposing, having a very high amount of tariff, no doubt it will have an impact on India's exports.
That is a choice. That is a choice that we are making. It is not only buying oil which is sovereignty. Choice that you make in each and every sphere. That is.
The idea of democracy is not the only factor that is holding India back. I'm saying there are multiple factors. For example, India doesn't have the kind of resources that China has, because after partition, a very fertile part of India, which was used earlier for cultivation, went into Pakistan. Population very high, food production very low.
In terms of percentage, who would improve better? I will put my bet on UP, because you are starting from bottom. Kerala would take a lot of time to move from 90% to 91%, but it is easier for UP to move from 20% to 50%. These are interesting times for Indian democracy, where every institution's credibility is at stake. There was a time when Election Commission was viewed with a lot of respect throughout the world. Our election commission would go to Myanmar and Sri Lanka and supervise elections. People are not at fault, then who is?
No, I am saying people are at fault.
Okay.
People are at fault because when you take a collective responsibility, when you take a look at your surroundings.
So I take collective responsibility in keeping a hygiene of metro, but not
Right.
Indian Railways.
At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. With these resonant words spoken by Jawaharlal Nehru, India made a tryst with destiny on 15th August 1947. And thus we began a new chapter in India's history. A chapter filled with hope, struggle, resilience, and promise. But as we mark 78 years of Azadi, it is very essential and pertinent to ask ourselves, is India truly free and independent? We as a nation have come a long way in achieving the ideals and vision that was laid down by our constitution makers and our freedom fighters. But there is a lot left to be achieved. In this podcast today, we have our esteemed panel consisting of Sarmad Mehrat sir, Mukesh Jha sir and Shyam Kagot sir to explore the foundational themes on which India's independence was built. We will talk about the horrors of partition, the evolving ideals of secularism, the hard-won gains of sovereignty and strategic autonomy. We will also explore the economic progress and the failures of India as well, along with the persisting social divisions. So let's throw open the debate, but before that, all of us wish you a very happy Independence Day. So Sarmat sir, what do you think about the ideal of independence? What does Azadi mean to you?
Azadi as a political concept and as an individual concept would vary. As a nation state, we became independent on the 15th of August 1947, as you said. And we are sovereign as well. The state can make a decision, unmake a decision. But what about the individual autonomy of the citizens of this country? An LGBTQ individual does not have the right to marry. What about his individual autonomy? A Dalit in India is still not allowed to, let's say, ride a horse or sport a moustache in different parts of the country. Is that truly Azadi for the members of the Dalit community, LGBTQ, and other minorities? So as you said, India became independent, but as individuals, we still have to strive towards that beautiful concept of Azadi, where we are truly free, where the mind is free, where, as Faiz Ahmad Faiz would say, Bol ki lab azad hai tere, bol ki zuba ab tak teri hai. Till we achieve that, freedom to disagree, freedom to dissent, freedom to speak your mind, we may not say that we are truly free.
Let's hold that thought. We'll come back to this and explore this more. So Shyam sir, what does Azadi and independence mean to you?
Independence for me will be being treated equally with all of others. Unlike, let's say, earlier situation where certain sections of the society were ill-treated, now we want to treat everyone equally. Azadi would mean there is independence for women to participate in the economic activity. Azadi would mean there is representation, my representation in the form of, let's say, voting that I do. The representatives are chosen by me. So I would say for a majority period of these things, we have achieved to certain extent, there is independence, but truly have we achieved independence? There are certain areas we are yet to achieve that.
As we celebrate our independence, the civil services aspirants of this country have another reason to celebrate. Now you can prepare for CSE 2026 and 2027 with India's leading IAS educators in English medium. And you can subscribe to our courses at 17,999 for 12 months. Join us and together, let's crack the civil services examination. Now, let's get back to the video.
Mukesh sir, the same question to you.
So for me, when we talk about the idea of Azadi or the idea of freedom, now that ranges from personal or individualistic to a collective idea. When we talk about, let's suppose at an individual level, idea of freedom basically refers to maybe freedom to choose, freedom from imposition of ideas, be it political, social, economic, freedom to, let's suppose, speak my own language, freedom to protect my own culture. So that is something, and basically, in a nutshell, freedom to say no. No in the face of overwhelming ideals which are being thrust upon you. That is the idea of independence at a personal level. That is the idea of freedom at a personal level. And when I talk about collective, then I'm reflecting upon the society. And both of us, and both of them, in fact, have talked about the society being free or the various sections of society being free or not. Now, as you said, we will discuss about it later, but when we talk about society at large, is the society truly able to protect its own philosophy of life, philosophy of belief, faith? Now, that is the idea of freedom. To a great extent, it has been achieved. We cannot undermine the achievement that has been already attained over the past 78 years. But yes, is the glass half full? Yes, but at the same time, there is a lot to be desired as well.
So now I would like to explore the theme.
What is your idea of Azadi?
Azadi, to me, as Mukesh sir pointed out, is both at an individual level and at a collective level as well. At an individual level, I think it's more about the political freedom, the freedom to express, the freedom to choose what you want to do, and the freedom to stand for what you believe in, and the freedom to lead a life where the state is not interfering, where something is not being imposed on you by the society. And collectively, it's about nation building, the freedom to build the nation that we want, with the ideals that is a reflection of our civilizational ethos, vision that would take our country forward to make India as a global power. The freedom to do that, I think, according to me, defines Azadi. So now that we have established at least what Azadi means for each of us, can we talk about the horrors of partition? Did India lose out right from day one by the partition of the subcontinent? Did we compromise on the ideals of secularism? When Pakistan came up as an Islamic state, India could have very well become a Hindu state as well. And there were many advocates for that at that point in time. But thanks to the founding fathers of India, India took a completely different trajectory on its own. So, Sarman sir, do you think that was the right trajectory for India at that point, or India should have been another Pakistan, a Hindu Pakistan, as some may call it?
So if you ask different people, some would say India was not divided on religious lines. India was divided on Islamic lines. Muhammad Ali Jinnah's concept of two-nation theory. Then Pakistan became an Islamic republic. Whether it survived or it is in the distress as it is today because they violated the foundational ethos of India's national struggle for freedom. But I have a different take. For example, you're a Hindu, Shamsar, Mukesh. You are an Indian by compulsion, or you are staying here because you have a compulsion. You had no other option. I'm an Indian and I'm a Muslim. I had a choice. I had a choice to go to Pakistan. I am a Muslim from Kashmir. I had a choice to go to Pakistan, but I did not. So I think I am more Indian than you are because I am an Indian by choice. And yet, when as an Indian, I have to prove my loyalty to the nation every single day, my patriotism is suspect. That is demeaning. That is insulting. I think Azadi for me would be a day when a fellow Indian will stop looking at me with suspicion, whether your loyalty towards India is divided or undivided. That would be truly a free Azadi, as I would call it.
I think you touched upon a very raw nerve there. Maybe let's explore that a little more. As you correctly said, off late especially, there's a lot of jingoism around. There's a lot of this narrative where you have to wear your patriotism on your sleeve, and somehow religion ends up defining your patriotism as well. So do you think Muslims in India, or minorities per se, religious minorities, do they feel that added pressure to prove that they're loyal to the nation, to establish their identity, national identity?
I think this is a question that you should rather ask a non-Muslim, and you will get an answer.
But isn't the narrative that this has to be proven by the minorities to be accepted into the...
Why do I have to prove my loyalty to the nation? Why don't you ask this question to Mukesh or Shamsir?
No, this is the narrative that we see on social media as well.
That's what I'm saying. So that's the part which is worrying. Ideally, jingoism is different, patriotism is different,
Right.
and there is a line which you should not cross. Is it unpatriotic to question the state? Is it unpatriotic to question the government? For example, Supreme Court saying in reference to a petition against Rahul Gandhi when it comes to the defamation, Supreme Court saying and proposing that you should not have said this if you are a true Indian. You don't need a certificate from the Supreme Court whether you are patriotic or not. Supreme Court couple of years ago directing all the people, movie goers, that as soon as the movie starts, before that you will have to stand up and rapt attention and listen to the national anthem being played for 52 seconds. That's not how you prove your patriotism. It is within. And that's the part of the narrative that I'm unable to understand. Yeah. And this is where you guys can come in and tell me whether I'm right.
So Mukesh sir, what's your take on the way in which India and Pakistan came up? As Pakistan turned towards the Islamic state, whereas India turned being secular.
Yeah.
What is your take on
So
this?
that is something which I feel, looking back into the pages of history now, see, hindsight is the best teacher, but then at that point of time, I feel it was unavoidable. That was because the violence which was happening on a day-to-day basis, the number of lives which were being lost. And when we talk about the states like Punjab, the states like, for that matter, West Bengal, and leave these border states, even when you take a look at the violence which happened in the states like Bihar, something that the spotlight has not been laid upon so significantly, there were huge divides which have been created into the society. And that is where, when we talk about the scars of partition, the scars of partition persist even today. Even today, I can tell you at the ground level, when we talk about the states like UP, states like Bihar, states like Bengal, there is a discernible kind of a difference in terms of that, okay, these were the districts which actually voted for Pakistan back then. And that is a collective memory which persists even in today's society. So that is where when Sarma sir is saying that why should I need to prove my patriotism, he's very correct in the fact that this in itself is a very perverted idea that an individual, a citizen, has to stand up again and again and say that, no, I am patriotic, I am a citizen. And we should condemn it. But then the reality of the times that we live in is where partition, if you take a longer term view, it is around 70, 80 years old. So the memories which the family suffered, and there are a lot of families which suffered, lives, loved ones were lost. And that is why that suspicious eye still persists. Right. And he maybe correctly pointed it out that it was not a partition on religious lines, it was a partition on Islamic lines. Right. That is why this idea
He has even said that Jinnah himself per se at an individual level was not Islamist.
Yes.
Whereas he still championed the idea of a
Non-practicing
Muslim. And for that matter, even during the times of partition, you would see the behavior of Liaquat Ali, Jinnah. Now both of them were basically going for property shopping in various parts of the country. You had large estates being booked by Liaquat Ali in Delhi, in Mumbai by Jinnah. Now
even in Bangalore, descendants of Jinnah used to own property.
Right. So maybe they also did not think it through to a particular extent. And you had famous quotations at the time of partition at the time of freedom, where Jawaharlal Nehru and many of the center-leaning Congress leaders, they talked about it that this is a short-term experiment and the country will be reunited within next 10 years. Now that did not happen, and we are still bearing the brunt of it.
Right.
And that is the saddest reality that we are confronted with on a day-to-day basis.
So let me bring in Sham sir. Sir, the communal divide that we saw during partition, what lasting impact did it have on Indian politics? And does it even define India's relations with Pakistan even today? What's your take on that?
Yeah. So during partition, like Samad sir said, there was a division on Islamic religion or Islamic lines. That particular division, when it happened, it created a huge impact. The kind of instances that happened, the kind of activities that happened at that particular point of time, it basically destabilized not only the relations between India and Pakistan at that point of time, that has been reflective even today. That is, whenever there is certain, let's say, normalization that is happening between India and Pakistan, and some, right, let's say, terrorist activities are happening or attacks are happening, that will be used as an instance to basically destabilize the complete normalization process.
And the impact on Indian politics?
What we have seen is basically that has been used as a tool by politicians to basically divide the whole society. And there are different lines that they use. Many of the times they will divide us based on the religion. That will be basically divide us into Hindus and Muslims. In addition to that, they will be dividing us based on the regions as well, based on the higher class as well as lower class. But definitely, yes, the impact of the partition and the aftermath of that, whatever has happened, is existing even today. That will be used as a tool by politicians to divide the society.
After all, when we talk about the society, politics of it, we cannot talk about politics in isolation. Politics and the politicians are nothing but the manifestation of the society that we live in. So the society, the ideas that the society inculcates, the ideas that the society has to live with, that is something which will be reflected in the political setup as well. And
But political setup, they set the narrative.
they do.
How far would you be sowing these seeds of mistrust and
Right.
keeping the flame of partition alive so that to divide the society forever and ever and ever?
So here again, I have a point of view. Think about it. Suppose the society is so very mature that the society doesn't pay heed or pay any attention to these caste communal divides which exist within them. Would the political leaders be successful in raking up these ideas? They wouldn't. They are able to gather large crowds. They are able to galvanize these crowds and this sentiment only because that sentiment does exist still in certain sections of the society. That should not happen, but it is.
Then how do you justify the performance of the right-wing political parties immediately after the first election was conducted? Till about 1980s, there were hardly 2 members from the right wing, ultra-right.
True.
Does that mean this sentiment was present, but political class was not in a position to exploit it?
Political class.
Or did the political upheaval which happened in the late 1980s,
Right.
that the political momentum which was developed by the Rath Yatra, so it was used by the political class to galvanize the votes?
Correct.
I would argue that we are basically discussing which comes first, hen or egg.
Yeah.
It is a classic case of situation where both the sides are incorrect. Political class represents what is the viewpoint of the masses, and masses basically follow the political parties. Right? So we keep on discussing round and round about this. My answer is both the sides are incorrect.
So this brings me to the question again. Are we truly independent that even today we are being divided on religious lines, caste lines by politicians? Whether it's underlying current in the society, whether politicians are exploiting or not, doesn't matter. Eventually, as a society, if we are still divided on these lines as a nation, do you think we as citizens are truly free and independent?
Oh, that's up for debate. I would like to hear the viewpoint of my panelists. Then I will put my point of view across.
So you see, I take a different view for this. But before I make a point here regarding the aspect of right-wing governments and whether they were able to capitalize it on the aspects of partition, one thing that we cannot miss is that it was Atal Bihari Vajpayee who actually visited Minar-e Pakistan. And that is where he was one of the first prime ministers who actually talked about the prosperity of Pakistan being in the interest of India. So that was to cover the wounds of partition. But then clearly, Obviously, his followers in the same political party, they don't ascribe to his view, and same is the case with the society as well. But that being
Mr. Advani calling Jinnah the
Jinnah
most secular person.
and faced a boycott in his own party
And
after
that's
that.
when he was removed as the
Removed as
BJP
yes.
president.
So that's what I'm saying, that his own followers in the party do not ascribe to that view. But coming back to the fact that are we truly independent if we are facing these divides amongst ourselves? The answer to that is that, see, it is two sides of the same coin. Take the case of any country, any society at any point of time in history. Whenever there is a ruler, the ruler will always try to divide you. And that is what Karl Marx said. And Karl Marx was referred to as an anarchist. The Marxians are referred to as anarchists. But the famous theory and the aspect is that, look, because you don't have the means of livelihood, political class will always divide you, regardless of how free you are. It is about haves and have-nots, and they will divide you. They will basically draw your attention away from the ways of living and the means of living to the aspects of religion, caste, the aspect of organized religion, and all those things. So that is a reality of the times. And we see across even liberal democracies, for example, consider France. Now, France is still dealing with the caste or the class divide, so to say, and that is very prominent. Take the case of Germany, take the case of Italy, take the case of UK. UK is again facing the same question about who is the insider, who is the real British, and who is not.
These were the champions of modern democratic
Ideals.
And there was a test which was, I forgot the name of that test. You look at the people who will be watching the cricket match. Those who will support the British, they are the real British. I forgot the name of the test.
Was it the Bodyline series of the Ashes that you're talking about at the time of Bradman?
That a very old one. Okay, now since we're talking about partition, Samvat sir, there is this narrative which has been built largely post-independent India that Mahatma Gandhi, Nehru, the combination was somehow responsible for the partition, that they failed to protect the subcontinent. What's your take on that?
I'm not a historian. I've read few books, but do I have an individual take on this? I don't know. Yes, it is true that it was argued that if Jinnah would have been made the prime minister, maybe partition would have been avoided. But then it is also true that Sardar Patel said, what are you talking about? Look at the interim government. The Pakistan is flourishing there. So as Mukesh sir said, that was an idea which was unavoidable. So Pakistan had to be created. The situations were such. But maybe if the power would have been handed over to, let's say, Jinnah, the country would have stayed united. But united then, and maybe later on, it would have been further divided. Who and what is the real reason we got independence on the 15th of August? Is it because of the Royal Indian Navy mutiny? Is it because of the less number of civil servants coming from Cambridge and Oxford who would have carried forward their white man's burden to civilize the uncivilized population of India? So there were multiple reasons. And ultimately it was, I think, the victory of Britain in the Second World War, but the decline of Britain as a superpower that ultimately had no other option but to free India.
Right. So now let's explore the idea of sovereignty and independence. Pandit Nehru, when he addressed the Constituent Assembly, he spoke about the idea of independence, and he said that a country is never truly independent unless and until we are independent in foreign policy. Because as long as you are an ally of someone, or you're essentially seen as subservient to a bigger power, they will always pull the strings. They will always compromise on your sovereignty, your political, economic sovereignty. So today we see enormous challenges in front of India. We are seeing similar challenges right during our independence as well, in the Cold War period as well, where India was always pushed by global powers to choose sides. Now we look at Trump's policies of almost arm twisting India. And Trump has done it before as well, with sanctions on Iran, forcing India to follow the sanctions, which we usually do not, because our foreign policy has been rooted in strategic autonomy. And this was a foundational principle of our foreign policy laid down by Pandit Nehru. So, Sarvat sir, what do you think would be India's options today in a divided world with leaders like Trump, with conflicts raging around the world? India is forced to make choices. And
when we began our foreign policy, which was rooted in non-alignment, Was that policy of non-alignment a bane or a boon for us? For example, look at the Russia and Ukraine conflict. At that time, we congratulated our foreign affairs minister for taking the right stance, as well as the prime minister, because we were neither supporting Russia nor Ukraine. But maybe that detachment led to our some sort of isolation during Operation Sindoor, where no country directly supported India's right to retaliate against the terror camps in
Particularly European
Pakistan.
countries.
European country. Maybe that was the backlash for our position on Russia-Ukraine conflict, where the European countries wanted us to take a stance against Russia, which we did not. And maybe that is leading to what Donald Trump is trying to do now, although he's transactional. But my point is, we should never be stuck in one frame of foreign policy, completely aligned or non-aligned. It has to vary based on the situations, based on the different realities of time. Somewhere we can be closer to United States, sometimes closer to Russia. In fact, it is our unrestricted, undivided attention to the friendship with Russia, which has played a pivotal role during the 1971 war, as well as during the recent times when you have seen interactions between Mr. Putin and the Prime Minister reiterating support for India. So it has to be transactional. We should not be rooted in non-alignment or completely alignment with either Russia or China or United States. That's how I would look at it.
So you're saying that only interests should be driving our foreign policy.
Yeah, there are only no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent interests.
Right.
And these interests should drive our foreign policy. That's why you ask yourself whether we should give in to the demands of Donald Trump, or should we play along and consider this just as an interim affair. And after Donald Trump, we will go back to a stable relationship between India and United States.
Right.
Because clearly United States' interest is in India. It should not be in the interest of Pakistan. If United States and other countries want India to counter China in the South Chinese Sea or in the Pacific, then they will have to have good relations with us. India is a big market for United States. It is United States which is going to be the loser if they try to arm twist us longer and longer.
Right. Mukesh sir, what's your take on the lack of support that we have seen for India's fight against terrorism, as Sarwat sir mentioned during Operation Sindoor? Is it a reflection of the weakness of our policy of multi-alignment?
So you see, if we take this particular event in isolation, maybe we can say, or we can arrive at a conclusion. But if you take a long look back at when terrorism started in India, and we have been experiencing waves of terrorist attacks since the 1990s. Now, remember, earlier the European nations would refer to it as a law and order problem that India had. They would never even use the word terrorism. Right, when you had the Legislative Assembly attacked in Srinagar, it was referred to as a government installation being attacked.
Right.
And that too by militias. They would
Or
never
armed men.
armed men. They would never use the word terrorism. And that puts me into the larger aspect in the question of sovereignty that we were discussing about. When were we truly sovereign? Was it the 50s and the 60s when we would toe the US line just because the US would grant us some amount of wheat because we did not have enough food for our own citizens? When you had the containers of wheat coming from US under the PL 480 program, it would make national headlines that now people won't die of starvation. When we came into the 70s, we were completely dependent on Soviets to such an extent. For example, now it is a slightly tangential aspect, but important one. You see, in the 50s and the 60s, we had our own indigenous defense production. We were able to produce our own aircraft. Now, in the 70s, we were so dependent on the Soviets, the entire program died. Now, that continued to the 90s. I would argue, in fact, it was only from the mid-90s onwards, that is, after the reforms happened, the economic liberalization happened, that is where India started really following what it wanted. Before that, we were never truly...
Don't you think?
But let me come in. There is a difference between sovereignty and self-reliance.
Yes.
What you're attributing to is self-reliant India. We were never self-reliant. We want to be self-reliant. We are not even self-reliant today. But we were always sovereign when it comes to the nation state. For example, we joined Commonwealth, and Pandit Nehru said, we are joining Commonwealth out of our free will, and we can come out of it as well, out of our free will. That's sovereignty. Sovereignty is joining WTO or coming out of it. Sovereignty is dictating our relationship with either Russia or United States. Sovereignty is accepting Russian help in 1971, and Indira Gandhi stood like a rock against the United States. That's sovereignty. Sovereignty is when we went to a war with Pakistan in 1971, despite global pressure, we withstood it. That's sovereignty. So as a nation state, taking a decision, making a decision, unmaking a decision, we were sovereign right from the time
But don't you
Constituent
think-
Assembly gave us our constitution.
But don't you think in a globalized, interconnected world, the very concept of sovereignty has
Yes.
become sort of a myth?
Diluted,
Diluted,
a
at
bit
least.
diluted, because you are so dependent on each other. And sovereignty in simple terms is about, in one sentence, freedom to make your own decision. That's it. Now, that is where I am arguing that did we have the freedom to criticize US in the 50s and the 60s? I would argue not. Did we have the freedom to
No, I
criticize?
would like to counter you there.
Yes.
During the Korean War, India took a clear stand against the US.
Vietnam.
Yes, Vietnam as well later. India took a clear stand.
Why was it that
But now
India
we
took
don't
a
see that.
Why did India take a stand in the case of Vietnam War? Don't you think that that is already at the point of time where we were deciding to side with the
Even before
USSR,
that, in the
Soviets?
1960s, this was pre-1971, where India took a clear stand against the Western.
And this is what sovereignty is. Making an option, choosing a different option, that's what sovereignty is.
Absolutely, yes.
We decided not to criticize maybe at one point, but later we did.
Yes.
We decided to take a stance on some matter, but later we did not. That's what sovereignty
So you
is.
mean the evolution, the freedom to evolve your policy as well is part of your sovereignty,
Yes.
right? But
So there
don't you
in-
think we were able to take all of these particular decisions because we followed a non-aligned policy? If you had decided to align with a particular party or let's say particular side, at this particular point of time, we would be in a difficult position. We will not be having that luxury of taking a time to change our policy decisions later. So just to come back to your argument earlier, you said we should not be following a non-aligned policy. We should take
I
a
did
stand.
not say that. What I said is we should not be fixated with one idea of foreign policy. We have to change it. Malleable, sometimes here, sometimes there, strictly keeping in mind our interests. That's it. So we should not be rooted, fixated with one idea. We will align with the US or with the Soviet bloc or non-aligned. No, it depends upon the requirements of the time and accordingly take a decision. That's what sovereignty is.
Shamsar, can you shed some more light on the impact of Trump's policies on India's sovereignty? How would it affect India's economic situation? Looking at the trade that we conduct with the USA, USA is a major trading partner for us. No doubt we are dependent on the USA market, like they're dependent on us for different reasons. So when you look at only the trade angle, the policies that Mr. Trump is proposing, having a very high amount of tariff, no doubts it will have an impact on India's exports. But having said so, will it be a long lasting? It all depends on how we react now. For example, now government of India is reaching out to other trading partners. We have signed multiple trade agreements. We are negotiating other trade agreements. We are reaching out to Russia. Right now, the Prime Minister will take a trip to China. So how these particular policies will pan out, it all depends on those particular policies, how Trump will continue to behave. In addition to that, if you look at the domestic market in USA, the people in USA are feeling the burden of the taxation now or the tariffs. Inflation rate has gone up. The food grains have become costlier. Bananas have become costlier. The people are suffering now. So if you look at all of these particular points, how India will reach out to other countries, what will happen in that, and what will happen to the domestic policy in USA, all these will have an impact on government of India's policy in the coming days.
Our sovereignty, I think, would be tested if we get in touch with the BRICS nations, Canada, for example, and United States is a bully. It has supported terrorist regimes. It has fueled terrorism in different parts of the world. It has supported Taliban when it suited it. Look at the history of violence in Vietnam, in different parts of the world. Sovereignty would be tested if the government of India can take a stance, get in touch with the BRICS nations, Canada, maybe the European countries as well, go for de-dollarization and mount a strong challenge and isolate United States.
But the de-dollarization, that having a de-dollarization policy right now will not work out.
Yes.
Because what will be the alternative currency?
What is Trump doing? Trump is threatening countries to come to the negotiating table and then negotiate.
It's more of a blackmail tactic.
It's a blackmail because he's a businessman, he's a transactional person, and you need to blackmail him as well.
But you have to understand that India's impact, let's suppose India puts a reciprocal tariff or a kind of an embargo in US goods as well. It will impact us more. Because you see, when we talk about the US market, Chancellor talked about the US consumers also feeling the burden
There
of
is something
inflation.
called self-respect as a nation.
Absolutely agreed. Absolutely.
And self-respect is something which is non-negotiable.
Absolutely agreed.
And
But
you can't give in to the bullyism.
Sir, I would
That
argue
is where, for example-
when you retaliate, it's not basically that you are standing up to him. If you look at the statements which have been released by the Minister of External Affairs, that itself is self-indicator that they are losing patience with the policies of Mr. Trump. You have already made it clear. You are also conducting.
But there is no strong statement.
No
which
strong
has come out.
statement, yes.
Yeah.
It sounds more apologetic. We are not issuing a direct condemnation of Trump's policies. Why is that?
The reason is you have to understand he is already at a higher level. He is already at an elevated level. You are dependent on the USA market. Yes, all of us know he is a madman. The policies do not make any kind of economic sense. But you are trying to negotiate with somebody who doesn't understand the, right, let's say the nitty-gritties of the
Or
economy.
he understands it well.
Yeah, he understands it, but we can't retaliate because we are not at a position like China is. China has control over critical minerals. So it's so they can basically bully Trump back.
US
And
can
that's what
replace
exactly
India with
China did.
Indonesia, Vietnam, Bangladesh.
Yeah.
All of them have the same factors of production that we have. They
And
are
lower
supplying
tariffs as well.
much lower tariffs, and they are supplying the same. For example, apparels, merchandise.
Then what is Azadi from 1947 till 2025 when we are dependent upon one bully?
I'll tell you. I'll not go as back as 1947. Let me talk about the past 2 decades. Hillary Clinton visits India as a Secretary of State and tells India that you have to stop buying Iranian oil from today. And we stopped that. Regardless of the fact that Iranian oil was cheaper. We stopped doing that. Today, when the same US is telling us to stop buying the
Sir,
Russian
no,
oil.
that was not during Hillary Clinton. That was during Trump.
No,
When it
agreed.
was Hillary Clinton, India stood up under the
No,
Manmohan Singh government.
agreed. But then
We bypassed the
that
sanctions.
that is where, if you see, it is not as if Iranian oil stopped all of a sudden. Iranian oil, the inflows, they
what you're
started
saying
reducing,
is
tapering
we are
down.
still buying Russian oil. That is
That is
how-
a choice. That is a choice that we are making. It is not only buying oil which is sovereignty. Choice that you make in each and every sphere. That is a freedom to be a part of a grouping. For example, when India became a part of BRICS and started prioritizing BRICS.
That is what is the bone of contention right
It
now.
is. There will be
Okay,
bones
sir,
of
just as
contention.
a counterpoint, you brought up Iran. So when the Modi government fell under American pressure in 2018,
Yes.
we zeroed out oil imports. We
Absolutely.
directly cut off
Yeah.
oil trade with Iran.
Venezuela as well.
Yes, Venezuela,
Venezuela
as
as well.
Iran was a very important strategic partner.
Absolutely, yes.
It directly affected our ties with Iran, our investments in Iran.
And
So
that is
are
where
we independent?
that is where
Where is our sovereignty?
I will argue that even that was a very wrong decision. It was a wrong decision.
So, but are we not looking at the term sovereign in its purest form? When you take a decision in the domestic market, yes, nobody can interfere there. But are we looking at this particular term in a wrong way that what we do, nobody should
Point it out,
basically
yeah.
point it out. I think that's a wrong way to look at the term sovereignty.
In a global interconnected platform that we are in today, what you are saying is absolutely correct.
Forex reserves would come under a lot of stress because of the oil import, which affects inflation in India, which affects a street vendor, which affects a common Indian. So when your foreign policy decisions, which has an impact on India, and you cannot withstand that, you cannot counter that a foreign country, then what sovereignty are we talking about? It affects India's internal situation, our domestic situation.
Just absolutely right. Nobody's questioning that. But my argument is
that's what you're
are
doing,
we
so-
not basically dragging the term sovereignty to cover even USA into Indian aspect? Are we not simply saying that whatever we do, nobody should argue us?
Sir,
And everybody should agree to us.
Yes.
No, we did face a similar situation. Maybe it's apples and oranges, but during non-proliferation treaty, India was under tremendous pressure to fall in line. But India stood up. The then government stood up and took a clear
CTBT,
stand.
Absolutely.
NPT.
Absolutely, yes.
Then why
So-
are we falling under American pressure now?
So what have we done after falling under American pressure? What do you think India has done under present Trump regime, which India should not have done?
As of now, we haven't seen a strong condemnation. We haven't seen retaliatory tariffs being
Because
announced.
you see, for the past 2.5 decades, regardless of whichever party has been in
There's
power.
a knife pointed at your neck.
Right.
That you have to negotiate a trade deal, a free trade agreement by this time.
Wasn't that the case when we carried out the Pokhran test for the first time in 1974?
No, India is not
was the same
accepted
from
to
the world.
negotiate.
No, but then when the test happened, not that we hit
That was the brilliant testament to India's sovereignty.
Now you're talking about the test. I'm not talking about what happened in the test.
The whole success of the
I'm
nuclear
talking
program.
about that after the test, the threat of the sanctions which were
You can't
imposed.
stop other countries from imposing sanctions.
Sir,
That is one.
that is a point
that
we are
is
trying
that
to
is
make
that
now.
is one side of the argument.
Yeah.
But at least you can retaliate. At least you can question it.
Sir, argument is, how do you retaliate? There is no standard formula for that. Yes, Trump said, in fact, in one of the interviews, Trump said, India stopped buying Russian oil. Have we stopped buying Russian oil? No, we are still buying Russian oil. I am saying, as long as you are not self-reliant, you cannot negotiate with somebody who has a better cards compared to you. But sir,
Was China always able to take the stand that it is taking today? No. China is able to take the stand today because
it
of
has
where
leverage. It has
Yes.
leverage. India also does have leverage in some areas. Now, take for example, guar gum, which is made from cluster beets. India produces 80% of guar gum, which is critical for fracking, shale gas exploration. Yes, and for US, it's a critical resource. Why don't we create a trade
Because
barrier there?
Pharma.
because
as well.
Trump is
Automotive components.
Trump is known for his policy to diversify away from shale. If you look at Trump's entire campaigning during the campaign period as well, that is where Texas and the Texans that he would invoke the pride.
But that would affect his MAGA campaign.
Absolutely.
And he will be ridiculed by his electorate.
Sir, I
No.
would argue against your argument now. Trump is not moving away from shale. I believe he is moving towards shale. And that is the precise reason he is forcing India not to buy from Russia.
Russia, but he's trying to explore and he is trying to sell India LNG as well to a greater amount. So
That's the
that
reason
is
one of
what
the
it is
punchline he used
also.
was, drill baby drill.
Yes,
During
Right,
election
yes,
campaign.
yes,
So
yes.
here's my question is very simple. Why isn't India standing up if we are a major global power? Why aren't
yeah.
we protecting our sovereignty?
I'm not
Why aren't
saying-
we protecting our economy?
Right. So I am against that entire argument of if somebody is, let's suppose, behaving like a madman, you should also fall to the same level, and let's see who reaches
diplomacy,
the
I
bottom
always
first.
think-
But you'll have to defend yourself.
Sir,
You can't let the madman bite you.
Bite you.
No, but
Sir,
then
I would
see,
basically
when
support
we-
Mukesh sir. You are saying, let's retaliate. You are having a particular idea in the mind and you are basically thinking, let's do what China did to Trump. I am saying we are not at the level of China to retaliate against Trump. What is better strategy at this particular point of time?
So diplomacy is always about.
Just give me a second. Let's say retaliate. Suddenly he'll impose 100% tariff. From 50 will double to 100. Can you imagine the kind of chaos that it will create in the Indian market? Are we having the same structure like China has? Are we a global market like China is? Are we controlling the critical minerals like China is doing? So as long as we not have that kind of a self-reliance, I would argue this is the right strategy.
Or maybe the right point of discussion would be if China also became independent around the same time. Why are we so lagging behind China?
So the kind of structure they have is completely different compared to India. The political structure they have is not.
Is it just because we are a democracy that is why we are lagging behind?
One of the main points is that because when you take a policy decision, let's say you want to acquire land, is it easy to acquire land in India? I can quote n number of examples where government had to backtrack because the land was not available.
So are you saying democracy has been a hurdle for India's economic
To a
progress?
certain extent, yes. Because, and that's the beauty of democracy, by the way. It's not a problem. It's a, like, let's say, beauty of democracy. We are basically making the government follow what is our interest. That is the true representation of democracy.
But this seems like an argument coming from WhatsApp University, pointing blame only on democracy.
I'm not saying
Okay, I
Look
will-
at,
look
look
at-
at
I will give
ease
you-
of doing business in China and compare it with India.
Yes, sir.
Why? Because there you can
Absolutely.
have
It is-
single
it is-
window.
It is not just every industry would need land. Approvals.
That's the reason I'm saying
As we celebrate our independence, the civil services aspirants of this country have another reason to celebrate. Now you can prepare for CSE 2026 and 2027 with India's leading IAS educators in English medium. And you can subscribe to our courses at 17,999 for 12 months. Join us and together, let's crack the civil services examination. Now, let's get back to the video.
the idea of democracy is not the only factor that is holding India back. I'm saying there are multiple factors. For example, India doesn't have the kind of resources that China has. Or maybe the policymakers have not had, let's say, the foresight that the policymakers in China had.
Shyam sir, for example, what you said, I totally attest to it. Think about it. In 2013, China spent half of its budget, half of its GDP on infrastructure. Can you imagine Indian government doing that?
Why are we not doing it?
It is not possible, sir.
Compulsion, sir.
There are compulsions which are
Which compulsion?
Sir, India houses one of the largest number of poor people. Now you can throw the term percentage at me. I'm not a
China was
percentage.
also poor.
That's what I'm coming
In
from.
fact, in 1950s, Pakistan had an upper hand when it
Yes.
comes to poverty.
Yes. Let's talk about the situation currently because we want to become like
No, no,
China.
we have to understand what happened in the past and how have we reached where we are.
So I would again basically go back to the idea.
Is it about the bureaucracy that we have in India?
Sir, it is a mixture of everything. For example,
UPSC is to be blamed for that.
I said the kind of political setup China has is completely different to India. Can you imagine the kind of, let's say, Tiananmen Square massacre that happened there would happen in India? Would people be sitting quietly if that happened? Argument is there are various, let's say, important factors that will differentiate China from India. But would I trade away my powers? Right? Let's say compared to me, the Chinese citizens, I believe, have lesser powers, fundamental rights to be very precise. Would I trade away those particular powers to become an independent, or let's say the powerful countries such as China? I would not be willing to do that. That's the reason we generally compare India and China. We are moving at a very small pace. We are like elephant. We are very large. We are moving at a very small pace. But ultimately, we'll reach the destination.
But Sham sir, this sounds of more like an excuse to me. Why hasn't
India addressed these basic problems?
If I can-
Education, the spending on healthcare, the spending on infrastructure. What have we done for the last 78 years? What are the achievements?
I would. So, in terms of healthcare, for example, you see, when we became independent, our life expectancy was roughly around 27 to 30 years, right? And we had large number of people dying out of starvation, famines. So, what happened during the 60s, 70s played an instrumental role, a huge role in making ourselves self-sufficient today. We are self-sufficient in terms of food production, at least. We have not reached the parameter where we should have. I will always stick to this point. Where we should have reached, where we could have reached, have we reached that level? No. But when it comes to China question, a couple of pointers, sir. See, China used its cities as growth engines. In our case, the cities have been stifling growth, so to say. Take the case of the city that we are sitting in. The case of how mismanaged this particular city of Bangalore is, that is leading to tremendous loss in GDP. Now
you might get a lot of hate for this.
No, but that is a reality. In terms of infrastructure, imagine the city like Bangalore, if it would have its infrastructure sorted, it could have very well been the Silicon capital of the world, the Silicon Valley of the world, but it is not. Now, when we talk about, now there is a reason for that. Look at the governance structure of the cities in China, and maybe Sarmat sir can come into this. When we talk about the fund allocated to the cities, the municipalities, now in our country, you have almost 5% and less amount of funds going to the city management, right? The municipalities and the ward management. Whereas in China, that proportion is around 45 to 48%. And even when we talk about the mayors or the people who are in charge of the cities, now they are much more recognizable in China as compared to, I don't know who the ward representative in my area is. It is simply the political parties who, so that is the role of the entire democratic setup. One point. Second point, we talk about liberalization, privatization, globalization as being the galvanizers of Indian growth, and we have seen that growth story. But we have to understand.
We were late.
We were late. Look at China. Deng Xiaoping did the same thing almost 14 years ago. And look at the structural reforms that Deng Xiaoping brought about. He fired close to around 18 million people from government jobs. 18 million people. Can you imagine even 1 million people being, and that was at one strike. Can you imagine in the name of restructuring of the government jobs and in order to make the PSUs profitable, can you imagine 1 million people in India fired overnight? That is something.
So did India make a blunder by following a socialist model in the initial years?
I don't think so.
I would argue no, sir. Because the situation demanded.
Initially, it was required, but we should have moved
situation
out of it.
demanded.
Yes.
For example, let's say initially our focus was reduction in poverty. promotion of agriculture, because after partition, a very fertile part of India, which was used earlier for cultivation, went into Pakistan. Population very high, food production very low. So obviously we had to focus on the idea of a socialism. We did not want to give away the power to private sector, which would lead to higher inequality, wealth concentration, etc. But yes, it was a mistake to continue for a longer duration. For example, there are multiple experts who recommended that we should privatize much sooner. We should have allowed private sector to invest in steel, aluminium, etc., which was tightly controlled by the government. Rather than allowing private sector to thrive more, we implemented policies such as IDRA, right, or IC 1956, etc., where the private sector was actually stifled. We promoted more and more in public sector.
Was it a leadership problem?
But Bisham sir, you were saying that if we would have privatized earlier, went ahead with liberalization earlier, the wealth disparity would not have been there. But don't you think wealth disparity is more after 1991 reforms?
That would have-
Oxfam report 1%
Yeah.
people control 99% of the wealth.
Yes.
So there is concentration of
When
wealth
you
in fewer
basically
hands.
talk about, let's say, the control of the government, there are huge problems with the model that we follow. We promoted a lot of public sector enterprises. And by 1970s, we realized a lot of them are loss-making.
Heavy industries.
Yeah, heavy industries. A lot of them are loss-making. And wherever we provided very small space for private sector, there was very strict regulation, licensing regime. And we did not basically provide the required support to even them. We did not throw them open. For example, earlier we had a policy for protecting small scale industries. And these were classified based on the investment. And when you classify based on investment and protect them, they will not be expanding, which is basically happening even today for that matters, right? There is a problem called as missing middle. Why are we not able to produce companies on the scale of, let's say, China does? Why are we not having global leaders like USA? Because of these kind of policies, we kept on protecting them, which is required because we were infants at that point of time.
Or is it about the mindset as well? As some people would say, India is busy making bourgeois industries while as China is investing heavily on AI.
No,
We had a thriving defense sector. We had
we had a lot of these micro enterprises, but the problem was we did not withdraw the policies much sooner so that the competition would begin. I'm reminded of let's say a time period when Ola approached government of India, asked for to be protected from Uber. Both of them global companies, by the way, right? Flipkart approaching government of India, asking it to be protected from, right? Let's say another company such as Amazon, which should not have been done, which was done earlier by the government. So we kept on protecting. We did not withdraw the protection. As a result of that, a lot of these entities prefer to remain small.
And coming back to the China example that you gave, democracy as a scapegoat, is it not about crony capitalism?
Yes, there was crony capitalism in India as well. Despite
It is still
yeah, it is still there. Despite
much
having
more or better off now?
I would say on a larger scale, it is present today. In fact, there have been multiple instances during 1950s and 60s where government wanted to control licensing. Who should get the license? Who should not get the license? There have been multiple instances where individual business houses have been issued with 50 licenses, 60 licenses in a very short time period, which could not have been achieved by, let's say, smaller players. So crony capitalism has been a part and parcel of, let's say, the Indian economy since the industrial policies is present even today.
in fact
So democracy should not be blamed for our lagging behind China.
Again, I'm basically coming to the same point, sir. Are we simply running behind to basically fix the blame, whether the government is at fault or we are at fault?
Because if you
For
don't
example,
identify the
just give me
blame,
a simple point here. Mukesh sir was talking about development of cities. Was government at fault not providing sufficient funds for the cities? Of course, yes. Even today, it's a problem. But are we not also missing a very important, significant point here? The municipalities are supposed to collect their own revenues and own revenues in the form of property taxes. How much is the property tax collected? Indians, I will basically quote Mr. Arun Jaitley, who said Indians are evaders, tax evaders. So argument is the government at fault? Yes. Are we free of the fault? I would say no. Right? So rather than running behind who is at fault, let's agree that both of us are at fault.
Which means the government is at fault if they are not able to enforce laws
Who will elect
effectively.
the representatives? Us. So we are at fault then.
but Sham sir, the popular narrative is India is overtaxed and overregulated.
that narration happens because there is huge amount of informal economy because of presence of
No, I'm talking about the high income
I'll come
taxes,
to that.
wealth tax.
I'll come to that. Because there is a high informal economy, government will identify the people who are earning salaries, whose salaries are getting credited into the bank account. They will target them only. Because the argument is very simple. Government in one or the other way requires money.
Or is it because of the political compulsions? Agriculturists, farmers are not taxed. There are
Farmers,
rich farmers.
I would argue still that farmers should not be taxed in India. For a simple reason, agriculture census
Even
says...
those big farmers.
I'll come to that.
Disguised farmers.
Agriculture
Absent
census
farmers.
says 87% of the farming is small and marginal. But the problem in case of India is, how do you identify who is a farmer? Right? We do not have exact number of farmers as such today. So I would still argue there are certain big fishes who are evading taxes, quoting that these are sources from agriculture. But we can use the technology in that context. We can use a lot of
Even
technology.
for that matter, sorry to interrupt you, sir. Even in agriculture, how can we tax agriculture when we have 87% of our farmers who belong to the category of small and marginal farmers? We follow a kind of subsistence agriculture in majority of the part of the country. Subsistence means you are growing something for your own consumption, not to sell that. So how will you tax those farmers? Now, when we talk about the high tax burden, it is true that there are competing economies which offer the corporates a lower tax burden. But we also have a limitation to that. Shyam sir mentioned that the large sector, the informal sector, actually ends up evading the tax. When we talk about, now Sarma sir talked about that the government is responsible. It is responsible. For example, when we talk about the 73rd and the 74th Amendment of the Constitution, you need to have these elections which have to be held periodically at the ward level, at the panchayat level. You see various different states flouting it on their whims and fantasies. The election for example, take the state of Bihar, take the state of Karnataka. Now, many of the times you will come across the instances that the municipal elections have been postponed.
That's my point, Mukesh sir. Isn't democracy being undermined? Isn't Azadi independence being undermined?
No, democracy, I feel, is beating the wrong bush here. It is not about being democratic or not. See, democracy comes with certain kind of chaos. And I think we have discussed it previously as well. It is not the best form of governance out there, but it is better than everything else which is there.
Let's say, if not democracy, then what?
Yeah.
That is my counter question.
This again sounds like what about?
And one argument about the China question I will give you with the example. You see, right now, everybody is fascinated about semiconductors. Now, you had the situation in 2007, 2008, when Freescale, which was one of the largest semiconductor industries of the world, it came and approached Kerala in order to set up one of the largest semiconductor plants, which was to be one of the largest semiconductor plants in Asia at that point of time. It had two conditionalities that it put in front of the government: that the land should not be litigious, which is a major problem in our country, that when you acquire a land, it goes under litigation and your entire investment is diluted. So the land should not be litigious, and there should not be an immediate strike for the next 1 year. Now, the government said, we cannot assure you about either of these circumstances. What happened? Did Freescale then start negotiating with other states? No, it simply packed it up and put it shop in China. And after that, you saw a rise of the ancillary industries. You see, one industry, when it comes up, it is not that only industry which feeds the people. It is a whole set of auxiliary industries which will come up. For example, in semiconductor, you will have the demineralization plants which will come up. You will have the purification systems. You have the electrical systems which come up.
Don't we see the Indian state always being reactive? Too slow to catch up
We
with
are.
all the trends.
Now, for example, Shyam sir, you were talking about taxes. What is the corporate tax rate?
Different rates are there. One is 30%. Effective will become around 33 to 34. Another is 25%. And the third one is 22%.
On what value?
On the profitability. On the profits which are generated.
And can you, with hand on your heart, tell me that corporates are not evading taxes? The idea of lowering the corporate tax rate was to fuel somehow employment. Has that happened? Is that not an example of crony capitalism? Now, should people be blamed or democracy be blamed?
Okay. So the argument is, it's not that only India is an example where there is an evasion of taxation. You take example of Amazon.
No, but you are saying, quoting Arun Jaitley, that Indians are by nature tax evaders.
Yes, Indians are tax evaders. Right, sir?
You should have quoted someone else.
That's a human nature. We want to pay as much as lower taxes as possible. But argument is the government always at fault? I'll take one more example. The famous company BYD wanted to invest $1 billion in India.
No, but
It did not
because
invest.
it is Chinese.
No, it was because of the government policy, not because Chinese, because of the government policy. So it's not that when investments are not happening, only it is because of the governments. No, it is because of multiple factors. We need to implement lot of reforms. We have implemented, but there is a need of implementing lot of reforms. But for that, you need a consensus between center and state, because only central government can't do anything. You need consensus. And a lot of times these policies are made because of political compulsions. Now you'll have to basically blame the people then.
But Sham sir, after 78 years of independence, as a citizen, my basic expectation is if I'm paying these high taxes, there should be good education, good healthcare, good infrastructure. If these basic issues are not being addressed,
You can't go to a government hospital. You can't
Put your kid in a government school.
Government school.
I would disagree with the second one, sir.
Yeah,
Government schools are much better compared to today. Again, my point is
it just rhetoric or
No.
It's government
The
schools
government
are much
schools of
better.
Delhi.
Many
No, government schools of
provide
Delhi
that.
are actually very good. Look at the toppers that come out of the Kendriya Vidyalayas in Delhi. It is actually very good. And you will find that
But
not
those are
only-
exceptions again.
Absolutely, agreed. See, it is not a something that...
Government school in UP.
Yeah.
Bihar,
There's a lot to...
Jharkhand.
West Bengal, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Telangana, then you...
Even rural pockets of Karnataka for that.
Right. If you isolate a couple of states almost in the entirety of it, you'll find this problem. And
Then what is your argument that government schools are better?
I'm saying compared to the earlier situation, government schools are much better.
Let's say, for example, we have to compare UP and Kerala. And I have to tell you, in the next 5 years, in terms of percentage, who would improve better? I will put my bet on UP because you are starting from bottom. Kerala would take a lot of time to move from 90% to 91%, but it is easier for UP to move from 20% to 50%.
So your argument is everything should be perfect. I'm saying it's not
perfect.
Nobody is saying
Not
it's perfect.
The idea is if you are paying close to 30% in the form of direct tax and cumulatively all the indirect tax, you're spending 50% of your, or even more
My argument
on
is,
your
sir,
taxes, then ideally you should get something in return. For example, what
So-
happens in Scandinavia. what
isn't it
happens
at
in
one
Europe.
point of time we were paying 97% taxes, sir?
My argument is
At one point of time we were. In actuality, around 97% was the tax. That is where the smuggling Raj came into place.
That's what eventually don't citizens feel that resentment?
That is the frustration which comes out on a
There was
daily
a lot
basis.
of hope that was built in 1947.
Yeah.
Now the state is not delivering. Yes, we all agree there has been some progress, but there are these big divides which are still
Sir, in
present.
fact, I would argue that the progress...
Unless and until you will start manufacturing alibis, excuses to save the government of the day and not question the government, we are going to stare at a problem. Even after 50 years, we would be discussing the same stuff. Because when the state is polarizing people on the lines of religion and caste, everything else is forgiven.
Yeah. Populist schemes as well.
Populist schemes as well. Look at what Karnataka is doing.
Free bus rides.
Free bus rides, 5 promises, and now it is being replicated in every state, which started off when Mr. Kejriwal came to power in Delhi, replicated in Maharashtra. We are staring at a big crisis.
But sir,
And if these populist schemes do not come to an end, look at the fiscal deficit. And then where is the time to make India a self-reliant?
And it also
Scary.
appears as
And look at the data, the number of people who are giving up voluntarily their citizenship and moving to the greener pastures. A number of people who are moving to UAE and other parts of the Middle East where there are less taxes.
even businesses, startups moving out to others is actually
sir, I'll just counter some of your points now. One, you pay taxes. You're not doing a favor on the government. It's your duty. That's one. According to law,
Similarly,
any country,
government
any
is
country
not
for-
doing
any
the same.
country for that matter, taxation is the duty of the citizen. What we are saying is, yes, you're paying high taxes. You should get certain good services.
But the foundation of what you're saying, sir, is based on social contract. which Thomas Hobbes, John Locke would talk about. But that was not a one-way street. It was conditioned on the fact that the state will protect your natural rights.
Yes. In that
The
particular
state will
case-
protect your resources and provide you security.
So in that case, I would argue that, are you simply saying government
Our
is not
women are not
spending money?
safe.
Is that government is
CCTV
not
camera
spending money?
installation, look at the number.
Okay. Is that government's only responsibility to provide CCTV camera? What about the people who will commit these heinous acts? Will you not hold them accountable?
Obviously, you
That's the
have
reason
to,
I'm
but
saying
you're not
state,
able
the
to.
police. That's the reason I'm saying we are holding only the government accountable. We are simply missing the other part of the puzzle. The other part of the puzzle is us as a society. I'm saying yes, government is at fault, yes, but government only is not at fault.
That's what. Where do we stand after 78 years? Is the future looking optimistic?
I'll give you an analogy, sir. What is the factor of corruption? One, the moral compass of an individual. If I'm morally upright, whether my salary is 1 crore per day or 1 rupee a day, I will not resort to corruption. Second would be the implementation of the anti-corruption laws. Even if I'm corrupt, I want to do corruption, but the law will catch me. Whose job is it to implement the law? The government cannot police your morals. The government will have to implement the law of the land and make it deter people from committing crimes.
So should we follow the China model in that case to remove corruption, where any other individual that Xi Jinping doesn't like is picked up on the accusation of corruption and that person
That's the
disappears from
reason
the face of the
democracy
earth?
thrives.
No, there is a
That's
rule
my-
of law. I mean, how many corrupt politicians have been arrested?
When you
That's
have more
speech.
than crores of people, crores of cases pending before the judiciary, you can always imagine that the people with power, they will always have some amount of leeway. Whosoever is in power, regardless of the political party, whosoever is in power will always have the leeway to adjust the balance in such a way that they are never found guilty. Take the case of, I would not go with the names.
Best example, sir. Currently, USA.
Yes.
The president doesn't like a report. He will fire the person who is responsible for the publication of the report.
Economists were fired.
Yeah, the president doesn't like how the judiciary is working. They will ensure that only the Republicans are appointed.
Sir, again, by looking at what
You didn't like the RBI governor. Do you not sack him?
Pardon, sir?
You don't like the chief economic advisor. Do you not sack him?
Sir, in Indian economy, please give me an example where RBI governor has been sacked before the end of the 3 years term. 3 years term. RBI governor is appointed for 3 years. Give an example where RBI governor before 3 years has been asked, pack your bags and go outside.
Or resign?
was it?
No. That's the
Deputy
reason.
governors not resign?
Pressurized to resign?
Sir,
So there are
that,
different ways of making you quit.
yeah, that we will
rather
present
than
in every
formal
system. But
termination letter.
my argument is we are simply browbeating only the government.
Election commissioners resign.
Only government is not responsible. We are part of the problem. We are not accepting that. I agree. I agree that there are some mistakes. In fact, I'm reminded of a quote of Mr. Mahatma Gandhi. He said, "I do not want an independence where I'm not allowed to make a mistake." Yes, we are making mistake. We are independent. We are making mistake. But that's the beauty of democracy.
Sir, this brings me to a concern that we have been seeing in the last few years. The weakening of our democratic institutions, the erosion of media's independence, judiciary's independence, the compromise on elections, the allegations which are coming up. Does this weaken India as a democracy, and what future does it hold for India as a state?
These are, there's an ancient, if we're talking about China, there is an ancient Chinese curse which says, may you live in interesting times. These are interesting times for Indian democracy, where every institution's credibility is at stake. There was a time when election commission was viewed with a lot of respect throughout the world. Our election commission would go to Myanmar and Sri Lanka and supervise elections, would train even some of the European countries how to organize elections. We would give lectures to United States. Let's not forget, it's our right to criticize the government and the state and question constitution as well. But look at the beauty of Indian constitution. Look at the beauty of India's Azadi, as we call it. Women were given voting rights in United States in 1920s. In Britain also, somewhere around 1920s. In Switzerland in 1970s. But in one fell swoop in 1950, we gave voting rights to every Indian, regardless of your religion, regardless of your caste, regardless of your sex. Shukumar Sen, when he was the chief election commissioner in 1950s, he took a lot of time to hold elections because he wanted the purity of electoral rolls. And today, the purity of the same electoral rolls is suspect. Allegations, whether unfounded or genuine by the leader of the opposition, should be met with some valid counter by the Election Commission of India. But instead, Election Commission of India is issuing statements as if it is a goon and not a constitutional entity.
It appears Election Commission is defensive and putting the onus on the opposition.
Not just it's the same Election Commission where there was allegations of Model Code of Conduct violation. Instead of sending notice to the leaders who violated, they sent the notice to the leader of the political party to which they belong. Failure to implement Model Code of Conduct, to accept that there are some flaws with publication of the electoral rolls. That is scary. Your democracy is at stake that way.
Okay, sir. What do you think about the regional divides that exist in our country, which has widened with time, widened with reforms? Though we have managed to, let's say, put down Naxalism, which originated because of all the regional divisions that were there. Even today, you see that there are many pockets, corners in India where underdevelopment is still staggering.
So see, while I'm an eternal optimist about the India story, regardless of whatever anybody says, I always believe it is a matter of when rather than if that we reach the height that we deserve. But when you bring this important question about regionalism, that is something that scares me, because it is not because of reforms that this has happened. In fact, I would argue it is the lack of reforms in many parts of the country. When we talk about, for example, Green Revolution. Green Revolution was implemented in the northwestern part of the country, right? Western UP, Punjab, Haryana. It was obviously, you had reasons owing to the infrastructure, etc. But look at the farmers in eastern India, look at the farmers in southern India. For example, if you consider the entire farming community in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, being a drier region in terms of the rainfall, it should have got the same amount of support like what maybe a Punjab or a Haryana got. It could have had a much better productivity in that case. Now we see, presently, we are in a situation where in many parts of the country...
Who is to be blamed for that?
I think it is a lack of reforms from the side of the government and
People.
the people. We are electing the government. We will be driven by interests left, right, and center. But at the end of it, we, as a collective population, we have to take some conscious decisions. And the blame on the government, I'm again saying and reiterating the fact, regardless of whosoever is in the power. I will give you a funny anecdote. The state that I belong from, that is Bihar, you would have, whenever you would ride or go through a train, right, people would always complain that the trains, the conditions are so bad, look at the other countries, the conditions are so good. And what they would do? They would steal the mugs from the washroom of the train, they would steal the bulb. And when you ask them that why are you doing it? The government should take a look into it. It is the government's responsibility. You know that when for the first time the Golden Quadrilateral was being built, now in sections of West Bengal around Durgapur, sections of that paved road was actually taken away.
This reminds me of what happened in Bangalore as well. When the newer bus stops were installed, there were granite benches and steel railings. They were stolen overnight. So, do you think Indians in general lack civic sense?
Yes. I think, sir, this was a question which was asked earlier to me as well. I think it is something which is very coterminous with the developmental stage of a society.
Yes.
You see, you will not expect this kind of a behavior in a developed country where everyone has enough resources.
But sir, being educated doesn't also guarantee that.
Absolutely, yes. It is not about education. Education and wealth is a different parameter.
I'll give you another anecdote. Delhi Metro recently, there was one photograph which went viral. Everybody was in queue when the metro stopped. Everybody came out of metro in queue, in discipline. You know why? Because there were more security guards stationed. So it is about the role of the state.
Then I'll give you an example of United Kingdom, sir. With such a civilized society with so much of, let's say, CCTVs, etc. Recently, you know what happened? Indians basically ate pan and spit everywhere. So my argument is, Even if you have CCTV, even if you have strict rule, people will commit crimes. People
But the
will
difference
do.
is, sir, there it was an exception. Here is it a rule.
Not an exception, sir.
Yes, you
These
won't
kind
see
of
palm
things.
spitting people everywhere in Britain.
Not in Britain, but in other countries, like we do in India.
But
Yeah.
sir,
So
sir, you look
my
at
argument is
the
simple,
Indian.
sir. Your
There
argument
is
is
one movie,
strict rule.
Rajpal Yadav has a dialogue. ये इंडिया नहीं है, इसको इंडिया नहीं बना.
My argument is you can have rule of law, you can enforce, you can have CCTVs. You can't change behavior of
Sir,
the
Role of
look at
society
the-
cannot be
Yeah.
ignored and put out of the
No, sir,
question.
look at the Indian community abroad.
Yeah.
The moment they go abroad, they follow rules,
Yeah, yeah.
traffic rules, all civic rules.
Right.
Same Indians come back and violate all the rules.
Sir,
Isn't
come
that
to,
a lack of
come to a
enforcement?
more pedestrian example. Metro train, he gave the example of the metro train. Travel by metro train anywhere in any city. It is very clean, swanky, very up to, the best standards. And look at Indian Railways. People don't hesitate to throw the garbage on the tracks, on the train itself, on the
Same
coach.
set of people, two different behaviors.
Yes, why?
So people are not at fault.
What is the quality of service BSNL offers? Can you justify inefficiencies by quoting social welfare?
So there, sir, I would like to interject. When we talk about BSNL, take a case of a remote area in Uttarakhand. For example, I will give you one of the cases when the Kedarnath disaster happened. You know, there was only one network which was functional at that point of time, and that was BSNL. When you talk about the northeastern part of the country, now it is not because there is lack of competition and that is why the private players are not going there. It is because they don't see enough dividend out of that. Now, slowly and steadily, because of the changing demography, because of a complete...
Change the policies just like you did with Udan scheme.
But is,
Make it mandate. There is a mandatory provision for banks
right.
that 40% of the loans that you have to give should be given to the marginalized
But
communities.
in many of the arguments...
But you can't do that with, that's where I'm saying this is the policy, failure of the policy of the
No.
state.
So here I would say that this is the same argument which is also put forward, that why Indian banks are unable to grow at the same pace as compared to their foreign competitors, because of this kind of a qualitative control that we put in. Now, second argument that you were talking about Air India, that how Air India privatization was the need of the hour and why this was not done. I completely agree with you that privatization should be done, in particular in the case of Air India.
It has already been done.
It is done. Who opposed that privatization for the longest period of time? Wasn't it the strikes which happened every particular time when you had the talk of privatization? You had the entire employee union backed by the political
Why
parties of
did
the
it
day.
happen when the government finally decided to sell Air India?
Even at that point of time, why was there?
But you still went ahead with this?
Because
so
they-
there was lack of political
No.
will. Because politicians would be benefited with Air India remaining under the state control. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think
I,
so, sir.
I would, look at the data, look at the statistic, look at the reports, where airlines would wait for a politician to board. And then why is Indigo in profit and with more than 50% of the market share? Because of the sleek nature of their operations.
The model is very different in the case of Indigo. The operating model is that of a Southwest Airlines. Only two airline companies in the world, Indigo and Southwest, they follow the same model. So Indigo and comparing Indigo with Air India is comparing apples and oranges.
No, I am talking in terms of operations.
That is what I
because of the sleek nature of their operations.
But sir,
because
you are
of the
missing a
turnaround
very
time.
important point. You are talking about a private sector company which works for a profit with the government. I'll give you one more example. Government promoted Udan initiative. What was the logic behind that? We want to ensure people will be able to get access to these kind of civil aviation services. Many of the companies have failed in that. Right? So it's not just that the government is wrong every time. Government takes into consideration not just profits,
Here
but the
I am
social
here I
welfare.
am defending the government. That's where the beauty of my argument lies, if I can praise myself. I am praising the government where it is due. I will criticize the government where it is due. I am praising Udan scheme.
So you will
I
praise
am
only government, you will criticize government, but not the people.
No.
You can't criticize the public
Huh.
when it is unnecessary.
Okay.
I can criticize myself, but I can't put the entire blame on the people of this country.
Okay.
Our constitution in its preamble begins with we the people. Let's not forget the government is of the people, by the people, for the people. And when we say of the people,
So
it
if the
means
government
ownership.
policies are incorrect, wrong, then who is responsible? Of the people, by the people, etc. People, right? So the buck has to stop at the people. how much enforcement can you do? For example, let's say you will say install CCTV. In every signal, there is a CCTV. Does it stop people from breaking the signal? Of course not. Now you will say enforcement. Can I install a police person everywhere? Do we have sufficient funds? In that case, I'll have to cut welfare expenditure. Will you agree to that? No.
Now you don't see policemen at the traffic signal. It is automatically challan goes to your mobile phone, right? Then you will have to pay. Technology enforcement.
Yes, technology enforcement.
It's like Jeremy Bentham. He once started a project called Panopticon. It was primarily meant for prison, so that we don't need some people to keep a track of the movement of the prisoners, inmates. It will be of glass, where people will be under the assumption that somebody is watching them, just like George Orwellian concept of big brother is watching you. Now on the traffic signal, even if there is no policeman, but there is a camera, what I will do, I will not break the signal, because I know if I break the signal, there would be challan coming my way. It's about enforcement.
Yes, there will be a challan.
You can't
How many
put
people
the
pay
blame,
the challan on
sir,
time
sir,
basis?
Sir, with due respect, you can't blame a woman because she is going out with her male partner at night to watch a movie, and you're saying that she volunteered for rape because it is the people's fault.
Was it the line of the government of India?
Let me complete, because you want me to blame the people, not the government. It's about the government. You can't blame a woman for the choice of her dress and say she wanted it. The length of her skirt will determine her character. Don't blame the woman, don't blame the people, blame the government where it is due.
Okay, so was it the line of government of India? Did Prime Minister of India or PMO release a statement saying that it was a fault of the woman? If a person blames another person, you can't hold the government responsible for that.
These statements were
But
made
sir,
by
the-
politicians.
Politicians. Okay.
No,
This is
no,
the-
no,
so politician is equal to government?
I'll tell you where the government's
This is
failure
where the
is.
argument goes out of them.
No, I'll tell you if you can listen to me. The Nirbhaya gang rape, when it happened, that bus had a tinted glasses. Why was it not stopped from flying?
Okay.
Whose failure was it?
Yes, it was a government failure. But the rapist doesn't have any fault in that. Was it not the fault of the rapist as well then? So is it not the fault of the people?
When am I saying that don't blame the rapist?
Array, sir, you are changing the goalpost now.
Yeah, he
What
has
is my
changed.
argument? My
Shyam sir,
argument
Shyam
is
sir, on a lighter
people are to
note-
be blamed, government is to be blamed.
Shyam-
Your argument is never blame people. We are at opposite ends now.
Look at full statement, not like 9 p.m. debates. As Mukesh sir was. Don't quote me out of
Sir,
context. I
Chetan
said
sir,
don't.
you come to a conclusion. Based on what he said, was he saying don't blame the people, blame the government?
his argument
And he
started
is not
from
now saying
Air India.
I said don't blame the people unnecessarily. These
Okay.
were my words.
Huh.
And blame the government where it is due.
So my
Praise the
argument-
government where it is due.
Yeah.
So you are completely absolving the
Okay.
role of governments,
Okay, so did
policy makers, in making our streets safe for women.
Yeah.
So this has been a very interesting, engaging discussion. And I think this debate itself is a symbolic representation of the freedom that we enjoy in India. The constitutional freedom which has been guaranteed, the right to, we agree to disagree is something that we celebrate. So I think on this occasion of the Independence Day, we've had a very healthy debate talking about both the positives, the negatives. But eventually the story of India is something that was written in destiny. India has set a very ambitious goal to become a Viksit Bharat by 2047. So on this day, let's wish each other a happy Independence Day, cherish the goals with which this nation was founded, reiterate our commitment as citizens to fulfill our duties to the country and help the nation grow as a global power. Thanks for watching and do subscribe to our channel.
As we celebrate our independence, the civil services aspirants of this country have another reason to celebrate. Now you can prepare for CSE 2026 and 2027 with India's leading IAS educators in English medium. And you can subscribe to our courses at 17,999 for 12 months. Join us and together, let's crack the civil services examination.